good afternoon, everybody. It's the Cryptid Huntress. I'm Jessica Jones, and boy, do we have a great show today. It's a glitch in the matrix where we always get a little bit glitchy. Not yet today, though. Fingers crossed. Okay, gosh. I want to thank everybody for being here. I have a wonderful chat already going in today, and I want to thank my moderators so much for being here today. You guys really do help me out so much, and it is so appreciated. We have my good buddy, Daryl James, here in the studio today. We're going to be talking about chimeras and reptilians. And Daryl has personal experience with both today, and we're going to get into that. He is a secret space program survivor. Okay, and I know we got into a little bit of the secret space program on Monday. Robert Coley was here. Man, wasn't he a cool dude? And he was talking about how he had encountered some potential like Montauk type project survivors and things like that back in the 1970s and more. If y'all missed that show, please go back and watch it. It was fantastic. Love me some Bob. Okay, he was awesome. But we have firsthand eyewitness encounters today with Daryl, with reptilians, you guys. So buckle up. We're going down the rabbit hole today, as we always do. And I know you guys are here for it, just like me. If you guys would like to follow along with all of my shows, I do have an archive of all of my shows on my website. Go to thecryptidhuntress.com. Of course, you can find them all here on YouTube as well. And you can find my social media links over on my website as well, as, including my Patreon and my Etsy shop as well. It's called War Woman Goods. Also, I have put out a brand new video, put one out on Monday evening for my Hunt Club members here on YouTube. That's the channel membership here on YouTube, if anyone is interested in becoming a member of the Hunt Club. Okay, let's get to our show today, because we have a lot to discuss today, and we don't get Daryl here very often. Okay, so let's get into it. Daryl James enlisted in the U.S. Navy on January 24th of 1999. He served 7 years, including one in Iraq, with the Naval Mobile Construction Battalion 7, or NMCB 7. In 2003, while stationed at the Royal Air Force Base in St. Maugen in Cornwall, UK, he passed through what he thought was a metal detector. It was a piece of technology that measured every biometric signature he had, including his IQ, which was measured at 195. He was soon recruited to join the secret space program and guaranteed a position as a pilot in Solar Warden, the star fleet that monitors our solar system. After a miscommunication with a 9.5-foot tall reptilian, he was sent to the mines on the moon. You guys can follow Daryl on his website. That's DarylDjames.com. And he's also a speaker at a lot of the conferences. And he's also my friend. Please help me welcome to the show, Daryl James. Hey, Daryl.
Oh. Hi, Jessica.
Thank you for being here.
Of course.
It was really wonderful getting to hang out with you again down at the Full Disclosure Now conference. What is that, about a month ago, I guess, we were down there?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And St. Pete Beach. Yes.
Down at St. Pete. Yes. Oh, my gosh. Those conferences are always fun. And, yeah. Lots of good times.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Absolutely. Well, we got to do a little catching up, and you had told me, you're like, well, I've had some more recall on some memories with some reptilian beings. And of course, I have a lot of new subscribers since the last time you've been here. And I thought maybe today we could talk about your experience with the secret space program from the beginning, when you first had that encounter with that reptilian fella that wasn't so pleasant. And even get into some of the underground base stuff with the trafficking that was going on down there, even Max. But I want to hear about the new recalls that you've had as well today. Does that sound good?
Sounds good. And if I'm going too long, just let me know, and I'll just kind of pick it up.
Okay, I got you. I think you're going to do perfect no matter what. Let's do it. Okay. Yeah. Before you start though, let me ask you. Okay, so you were actually assigned to like a battalion where you guys were. It was actually Solar Warden, where you guys were monitoring the solar system.
Yes.
My question to you is, are you monitoring right now what is that, 3-eye atlas that's supposed to be coming in it's in the solar system right now? What
Well,
are your thoughts?
I'm pretty sure I'm back now.
Mhm.
I'm pretty sure of that. It wasn't like a huge revelation, but you called it the 3-eye atlas?
Yes.
I
There's
am not aware of that. Yeah.
something hurtling. Okay, well, it's a 7-mile long. A Harvard astrophysicist is calling it a hostile alien spacecraft, and they say that it's headed towards Earth, but it's not going to hit Earth. It's going to go behind the sun, is what they're saying. And that was given to me as a remote viewing target. And the first thing that I wrote down in my data was Dark Fleet. Okay, so Dark Fleet was in my data, and I'm not really familiar with all this jargon and lingo with the secret space program. I don't know about the Dark Fleet, and I was just wondering, like, what your thoughts might be on something like that that's coming towards Earth.
Well, I mean, something coming towards Earth, I'm not really sure, but I remember I talked to like the lieutenant before I left. He was the doctor on the dock of the base. You had one final physical before you left in the military. And I was made aware by my executive officer that he was an off-world German, is what the military calls them on Earth. And I was kind of, cross with him, and I really didn't have a good opinion of the off-world Germans or the Dark Fleet. But he said, we're helping you. That's what he said to me. He said they were helping Earth. So I don't think there's like there's no monolith. In other words, like there are breakaways and things like that from these different programs. I think maybe a part still work for the Draconian Empire, but I also think that there's like a breakaway as well of off-world Germans.
Oh yeah. Yes, I thought it was interesting too that there's this only one Harvard scientist is claiming this is a hostile craft headed towards our way. And I think that's kind of been the discussion that a lot of people are having. It's like, well, how would he know this is hostile? And, is this part of the alien invasion, they've got planned for us and that kind of stuff. So it may just be fear mongering too,
Could be. Yeah. If it's changing the trajectory, that's probably maybe a change like, direction. Maybe that's why he thinks that, that it's not just like a meteorite of some sort. Maybe it's a craft.
Yeah, it definitely looks like a craft. But see, we have the disclosure right here at our fingertips with people like yourself. Okay, we have the real disclosure out here. Okay, that's what they're putting out to the public, and I applaud you for being so upfront and vocal about the things you've experienced. It takes a lot to be able to discuss these things because this is very difficult. I would assume, right?
Oh yeah, and it seems like trauma is what helps unlock new stuff. And it was like, trauma that I had a little bit back, and that's like what unlocked this new memory. And besides that, I pretty much think I recall everything. But yeah, I just had another event happen to me, and then that unlocked like new memories and things like that.
Oh my gosh. Yes, it's always when we go into the depths of the darkness within our subconscious, that's where the truth lies. Okay. And that's even when like we're on your spiritual journey and you're doing your healing, you really got to dive down, and it's all that trauma that does unlock a lot of the memories that we have. And so a lot of the times it's the trauma that makes us hide it all too, right?
Yeah, I would say so, of course. I mean, it keeps you sane in a sense, I would say. You know what I mean? And it's just the conscious, I was told by a doctor the way it works is, suppressed memories and things like that. They kind of creep up every now and again, and they kind of come to the surface every now and again. But if the conscious mind feels that the mind isn't ready yet, it pushes it back down into the subconscious. So sometimes these memories will float back up, but then when, if the conscious mind doesn't feel like you're ready for it yet, it just pushes it back down into the subconscious. And that's kind of like how I was told about all these suppressed memories and things like that.
Oh my gosh. Well, how did this start out? You're one of the few people, one of the only people that I've ever spoken with that actually, I'm not going to say you volunteered to be a part of the secret space program, but you were promised, like you were actually offered a contract, right, to become a member of the Solar Warden. Is that how it started?
Yeah, I was talking to my executive officer. His first name was Robert, and he's the second in command of the base of St. Maugen in England. And he told me with my scores, he would guarantee I made commander and pilot of a 4-kilometer long starship. And he told me that they look similar to the ships in Battlestar Galactica, is how he put it. And this was like a little less than a year, I think, after Gary McGinnon hacked into NASA, a guy from Scotland. So it was still kind of like a current event. And he told me it was all real, like, all the files of extraterrestrial officers with ranks and social security numbers, cigar-shaped craft over the moon, all these photographs they had of these cigar-shaped craft. He said it's all real. And the only reason they didn't extradite him is because people say it's because he was autistic. But he told me it was because he would have been able to call witnesses, and it would have blew the whole lid off Solar Warden. He already had all these files and everything. So he would have started asking where are these, extraterrestrial officers at, and he would have called them as witnesses, and it would have blew the lid off Solar Warden. So they just kind of covered it up with the Iraq War, because the Iraq War was happening at the same time.
Oh, wow. Oh my gosh. Well, like I said, this is the real disclosure, everybody, right here. Okay. With people like Daryl. Okay. So that's very interesting. There's always something more going on. Okay, than what we're told and what we're shown, and that's what we are unraveling every day here on the Cryptid Hunters channel, of course, and that's with the help of witnesses and the remote viewing targets and all that kind of stuff. Man, all right. So you were offered a contract to be a pilot or to have a big position in the Solar Warden. Tell me how that worked. What happened? They sent you. I mean, you knew you were going to be going into space. Like space, this is before Space Force, right? Or the public.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, he was. We were walking around the base, just on the sidewalk of St. Maugen, and he was just telling me all this stuff as a matter of fact. And before that, they call it a drone, where it's like I think your stereotypical kind of gray, but it's more like it was light brown with like a hue of pink about it, and it had the big black eyes. It had a fold of skin from its tear ducts, like going down to its cheekbones. And it took apart like a Dell computer right in front of me in like 18 seconds. It was very quick, and it had a drill in its hand, and it didn't have the guide, the bit in or anything. It just hit the screw every time like a machine, and was catching the screws with its hand, and it slid the top off, and it took out 2 gigs of RAM, it put it on top of the table, grabbed 2 more, popped them in, and then slid it back on. And it kind of flicked its wrist and was able to like set a screw in between its fingers every time, and it just put it right back together. It was like watching a machine. And I found out later that they were like basically like organically grown kind of robots almost, where they like had a hive mind, a hive consciousness. They shared like a consciousness.
Whoa, that is wild. I could not imagine. I mean, that just bends reality for you right there. Seeing something like that, I would imagine.
And that was the initiation, yeah, to see if you would. I guess they wanted to judge your reaction. Would you run away? Would you attack it? Would you just stay still? And I just kind of stood still and watched it do this. And yeah, it was remarkable and frightening at the same time.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's got to be a test, like a psychological test right there, to be like, okay, is this person going to totally flip out or what? And I'm assuming the people that do flip out, they probably have one of those little MIB mind wipe wands, right? They're like, all right, you forgot about this, I guess. I mean,
there is like a chair, and it's like they call it like a density chamber, and it's reptilian technology, because he told me that like we're 3rd density and 4th we have the ability to go up 1 density naturally through like meditation, astral projection, things like that. And that's like the astral plane, the spirit world. That's where 4th density is, and that's like where the reptiles are. They're kind of like in that realm. And but they don't have the ability to go up 1 density naturally like us, so they can't go 4th to 5th. And since 5th density is like where a lot of the major movers and shakers are, it's kind of like in the middle. He told me that the highest they know of is 9th. Not even 9th density beings know anything higher than 9th. And yeah, that chair, that density chamber, was actually invented by like the reptiles to push them up artificially into 5th density so they can kind of compete. It was like a means of them competing. And they used the same technology on us because these beings, these fifth density beings, are much too fast, much too strong. Your IQ goes up 200 points and you become more of a collective, like you become more of like a group. And the XO was actually, he was from the year 2580, he told me. And he said that by that time they made it to fifth density. And he said, he showed me like a belt he was wearing, like under his uniform, like on top of his, his undershirt. And he said, if I wasn't wearing this belt, I would just look like a quick flash of light to you. He said you wouldn't even be able to see me. So like these ETs that are like fifth density, which are like, your felines, your canines, your Nordics, things like that. These beings are all like in the fifth. And, if you ever see like a quick flash of light, just like a little bit of light flash in front of you every now and again, that could be them, because that's how he described it to me.
Oh my gosh. We've actually been talking about that quite a bit. We have a lot of ET activity out in the field when I'm doing Bigfoot research, right? And a lot of flashing lights. And the past 2 Saturday night shows that I've had people on the shows who are Bigfoot researchers. We got Bigfoot Dwarfs in the chat right now, was my guest on Saturday. My friend Keith from my team was on my show last Saturday before that. And we're seeing flashes of light out there, and we're associating that with maybe portals opening and stuff like that. But I mean, all roads lead back to ET, as the head of my team always says. Okay, even out there when it comes to our cryptid research and stuff, it's always flashes of light that is a constant out in the field, Daryl.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And these are just these beings maybe walking past you. It was described to me that they're all around us and we're just not aware of it. Is what it is. Yeah,
they got to wear their belts
walking around us constantly, and they really don't pay much attention to us. I don't know. I kind of compare it to like, you have to get on your hands and knees to see ants. You know what I mean? I don't mean to like make it sound that way, but it's just something they really don't even pay attention. They just kind of like walk by, and it's a split second for us, but for them, it's just like walking by. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I get it. I totally get it. And, and I can kind of relate it to remote viewing when I was training in remote viewing practice, and the type the military uses and all that kind of stuff. I was always instructed, it was very important, I was instructed to never associate with lower vibrational frequencies. And that's basically what you're saying that they do to us. Like we are definitely, if they're in a 5-dimensional reality, we're the lower frequency for sure. So they're not associating with us. We're not even a blip on their radar. And But let me thank Brian real quick. Brian Sang is in the chat. Thank you so much, Brian. Says amazingly detailed testimony from Daryl on the secret space programs on Jessica's channel. Thank you, Brian. I appreciate you. We both enjoyed your conference, by the way. Thank you, Brian.
Yes, Brian. Thank you.
Yeah. But that's really interesting about how you said it had to wear a belt for you to be able to even see it, to even like bring the frequency of it down. Huh.
Yeah. He said that, and it just looked like a thick piece of electrical tape. There was no buckle. ET tech is like that. There's no seams. There's no anything like that. And I asked him if his wife knew, and he said no. And then I said, well, you just wear a belt all day? And he said, no, I wear a bracelet. He said, but he didn't like to wear it in uniform. But he said he told his wife it was just, Chinese magnets, like back when the Chinese magnets were like a fad and things.
It's for health. It's for good health purposes, right?
Yeah, so he always had like a black strap on his wrist when he was like out of uniform. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's wild. Again, it's kind of making me think about like all those art carvings of like the Anunnaki, right? And they're all holding the purse. And I've been told that could be like a portal key or something like that. And it's like, so they have to get their body into a certain frequency to be able to go through the portals. I don't know if that's a thing, but
and these beings, I was told, I mean, this kind of goes into like what I was going to talk about, and it was they're all real. Like they were all real. Ooh, where'd it go?
Yeah.
Can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like these beings that you see in these like Babylonian, the ancient Egyptian, and things like that. These were like all real beings. Like these weren't just figments of their imagination or things like that. They actually walk the earth with us, and we used to worship them as gods long ago. And yeah, they all walked around like just normally with us.
Yeah. What happened? What happened? Where have they all gone? We just went into a lower frequency. Okay. Is that what it is?
Well, I mean, it was like he explained to me that, and this goes into like the whole reptile I saw in the underground base and everything like that. And I was asking, he told me it was Sobek is
Sobek.
what it was. Yeah.
That is an ancient Egyptian god. Actually, we had Matthew Morning on the show about a couple months ago, and we were talking about the positive or neutral reptilians, and
Hmm.
Sobek came up actually, and that
Hmm.
is the crocodile headed god of ancient Egypt.
Yeah, and he looked like that. He was but he could kind of like change. He looked kind of more snake like at times, and then he looked more crocodile like because he was lower fourth, and it was almost like he was trying to deceive me. He did this thing where he was kind of like in front of his torture table, like he had all the blades and everything else like that. He was torturing me with, and this is like the being that inhabited Michael Aquino. This was like the being that astral projected itself into that body, which was like an empty vessel. They have technology that can take consciousness out of a body. They have to do it before puberty, and then something else can kind of project itself into that body. And I remember I was looking at him, and I was, hanging off of like a torture rack, and I was just like looking at it, and he noticed that I could see him, so he just disappeared, and then all of a sudden he was down and to the left of me, looking at me.
Mhm.
Then he disappeared, and he was like back and to the left, and I could still see him every time he disappeared. And then he walked towards me slowly, and yeah, the goon at the bar. You have to kind of like watch my other stories to make more sense out of this. But the goon at the bar, which was like a British Army Satanist who worked directly with the reptiles and all that stuff, and harvesting the drug from children and things like that.
Mhm.
Um, he asked me one time, he would get drunk and he would say things. He was there when my torture was happening. He was like his little errand boy. He was the one doing most of the torturing for the
Wait,
reptile.
Daryl, can I ask you why were you being tortured? Did you get reprimanded for something, or what happened? Is that when you had the miscommunication with the reptilian guy?
Yeah, and it's like, and then I did the entire program, and then I came back in time, and then when I came back was exactly at the moment whenever I poked the reptile in the eye, and yeah, I was being punished for that. I was basically being
Okay.
punished. I was supposed to be tortured to death, I guess, basically, but I wasn't, and yeah, and going on to the story, yeah, the goon at the bar, the Satanist, he said,
Mhm.
he asked me if I ever did acid before, and I said, well, I've done mushrooms. And he goes, well, that's similar. And he said, do you know that feeling you get, like waves coming down from the universe, and it feels like waves passing through you over and over again? And I said, yeah, I used to call those echoes. And he said, echoes, that's a good word for it. And he said, well, they live between the echoes. He said, you could see between the echoes. You could see Aquino. And he didn't like that he could see you. So he went back in time and he destroyed your childhood. And that's like how he put it. And I found out later that older, like ETs, all ETs have the ability to go forward in time, but only when they get older, like around 2,000 years or older, that they can actually go back in time on your timeline and kind of alter it. They can alter your timeline. And that's kind of like what happened. And how all these memories came up was my mom, she got, all the vaccines, and she got all the boosters and all that stuff. And she died of, turbo cancer. And I was in the hospital sitting down next to her the first day she was there. And I saw on the news that Paul Rubin died.
Mhm.
And I remembered being in the office with Robert. And I remember he was telling me all these things. He was telling me about my dad. He was telling me he raced cars. He was a mechanic. He wore glasses. He rolled the sleeves up on his shirt. All this stuff, all these details he knew about me. So I kind of said, don't tell me when my mother dies. I was like, you can tell me anything else, because I could tell he was like looking into my. He said he was looking down my timeline, like seeing my future. But he said he saw my father through like the looking glass technology, which he said is in all underground bases. And then all of a sudden he looked at me and he said, "Your mom dies 3 days after Paul Rubin." And I said, "Pee Wee Herman."
Oh
And he said, yes. And I said, well, how do you know that? And he said, because you're sitting down next to her at the hospital and you're watching the morning news and you see that Paul Rubin dies and she dies 3 days later. And yeah, that's just like how that memory got kind of triggered. And I was asking him, he told me that the reptile was called Sobek. And I said, what's that? And he said, Egyptian god of fertility, guardian of the Nile. And I was just like, and it's kind of, what the hell is a 5,000? And he said it was a 5,000-year-old reptile. And I said, what is a 5,000-year-old reptile doing in Cornwall? Like, it made no sense to me why he would have been in Cornwall. And he explained to me true Egyptian history. He said that true Egyptian history is more like 10,000 BC, not 3,100. And he said originally the avians came, which is like Thoth and Ra, the avian kind of deities in ancient Egypt. And he said they built the pyramids, the Great Pyramids. And I remember when I was at the second conference of Journey to Truth, and I was part of a panel, and one of the audience members asked me, how do ETs get their power for their world? Do they get it from the ether? And I answered, they get it from the magnetic field of their world. And Robert explained to me that what those pillars are below the Great Pyramids they're a means to pick up the magnetic field of Earth as like a power source. And he said the pyramids were once covered in sheets of gold. The obelisk acted like a Tesla tower, and that was covered in sheets of gold. And he said that the avians used it primarily as like a means to communicate with their home world and also as like a portal. And he said that the avians gave the ancient Egyptians basically light and heating for their homes. He said they were too technologically like primitive to be able to comprehend like advanced ET tech. But positive ETs are like reciprocal. If they're going to take some land from you, they'll give you something like in return.
Mm-hmm.
So they gave them like lighting and heat. And he said there was still a Bronze Age people. And he said that the ancient Egyptian got all their tin, which the number one export from Cornwall to this day is tin. And he said that they got all their tin to create bronze because, tin is mixed with copper to create bronze because they were still a Bronze Age people. And he said that Cornwall would have been where their capital city would have been back in those days, like 10,000 BC and things like that. And like the trading, he also went into the whole, I forget exactly what it is. It's like 85% of British men have the same Y genome or something like that, where they're relatives of King Tut. And I think it's like, I think it's 50% of all Northwestern Europeans and like, I don't know, like 70 or 80% of all British men like are, related to King Tutankhamun. And yeah, so he told me about that, about the tin mining and everything like that. And then he said 7,500 BC is when the felines and the canines came. And I asked him, I said, so, talking about the avians, I said, so they had feathered heads and they had flesh bodies. He said they looked just like the paintings and just like the statues and everything else that they depicted of them. And he said, no, he said they would have had feathered bodies, the avians, but the flesh bodies represented they're humanoid like us, they're flesh and blood like us, they're mortal is what he said. And then he said the avians came at 10,000 BC, and then the felines and the canines came around 7,500 BC, and then the reptiles came whenever Egyptian history starts, which is around 3,100 BC. And he said that they got into a big war with the the felines, the canines, and the avians, and the reptiles basically, drove them off the world, drove them off planet, off of Earth. And yeah, he told me about that. And well, I mean, he also told me that eventually we got into a war with the reptiles, and we had outside help. And the war came to a stalemate. It lasted so long, it came to a stalemate. And the agreement of the stalemate is we would get the above ground and they would get the underground. And I said, well, sounds like we got the better deal. And he said, not really. And I said, why? He said, because there's more real estate underground. There's like caverns. Once you go deep within the earth, there's caverns, and there's actually like an inner star and things like that. And he said that because the waves crashing into the cliffs of Cornwall, it created a complex cave system. Like there's actually like a cave that goes from the tip of the peninsula of Cornwall, which is St. Ives, and like an underground river big enough to where a nuclear sub can go into this underground river, and it can pop up in like an underground like pond in St. Maugen. So like, you know, these nuclear subs can actually enter through the beginning of the peninsula of Cornwall and then pop up at the base I was at. And yeah, I mean, that was about it. What he told me about like true ancient Egyptian history, that like that those pillars beneath the Great Pyramid are a means to be able to pick up the magnetic field of Earth as like a power source. And that's how like ETs get their power from on their worlds and things like that.
That makes a lot of sense. Did you get a chance to talk to Trevor Grassi, who was at the conference, who does all the work underneath the pyramids and stuff in Egypt?
I don't believe so. No.
Yeah, he was very interesting. I sat and talked with him one of those nights. We were out there. I need to get him on the show. He's part of that team that took like the sonar readings, what's underneath the Great Pyramid of Giza and stuff. That was in the news a lot this past year. So, but that's fascinating. So, bottom line, the reptilians went underground, right? And then the rest stayed above ground.
Yeah, and you know, they've been infiltrating our, you know, religions and our you know, our educational system. They've been like infiltrating us through different means, and also through these vehicles, these people that, you know, I guess when they're, like I said, when they're young, when they're before puberty, they can't do it when they're too young because the body is mostly like a vehicle and it's mostly sedentary. And so they wait till they're about 9 or 10, so the bones are strong enough and everything like that. Otherwise, the body would get weak and die. And they wait till they're about 9 or 10, and then they extract their consciousness, their soul, from the body, so something else can inhabit that body and use it almost like a vehicle. And that, I think that's what a lot of our politicians are, and a lot of these people that you hear about. And he also told me about the I saw elongated skull, and an elongated skull. I have a good memory of that while I was in the underground base. And I remember he, you know, Kino, the reptile, whatever you want to call it, said that I told him I could play classical guitar because I could play back. I just got out of the program, and I used to play a lot. And he sent the goon, that one British Army Satanist, into like another like area of the caverns, and he came back out with a guitar, and I started playing. They took me off the rack and they gave me a chair, and they even gave me like a butt can from outside so I could prop my leg up, you know, to play like in, the proper stance. And when I was playing, all of a sudden one of these elongated skulls came out, and it kind of like gnashed its teeth together and lifted its head up as I was playing, and it kind of like was like looking at me like that. Like as I was playing, it was like, and it had very big blue eyes, and it was kind of sunk in around the eyes. There was like a sunken in, you know, of skin around the eyes, and it looked like it was wearing like a red turban, but I think it was its hair. I think it kind of wrapped its hair around its cone head really tight, and it looked like red silk almost, because it was kind of dark, you know, in the caverns, and it was wearing like a red robe with like gold trim or something like that, I believe it had on it. And I remember the guys in the underground, I mean, the guys in the barracks talked about it when I first got to the base, about the elongated skulls, and they said that their average IQ was like 160. So like a genius level would be over 300, like a high genius for one of them. And they said that, you know, they were really amazed by our classical art and classical music, and that, you know, you see the Rothschild, the one that died, he was going bald, and he had kind of like an elongated skull. His skull was kind of long, and they told me that they're basically cannibals because they eat people underground, and they have enough in common with us DNA wise where they can have children with us, but the children are born like mules, like they're sterile. You know, like when you put a horse and a donkey together, the mule is always sterile. So the children are always sterile. but they can have like hybrid children with us. They're close enough, like genetically related to us, to where they can have children with us.
Whoa. Okay. Oh man. Well, my mind just went somewhere left. Okay, on that one, because I'm thinking about all the people who are like our presidents. Okay, people that are world leaders. You know, if they are of these bloodlines, let's just say, you know, a lot has been coming out where a lot of their wives. Now, I'm not saying this is fact. This is for entertainment purposes only. Okay, but a lot of them are actually, the women are actually men. Okay, and things like that. So I know that's a whole different rabbit hole, but it's still, that would line up with like, well, they can't reproduce, right? So if they are of those bloodlines.
Yeah, I mean,
So
they have med beds and stuff. Maybe they can fix that, but when they're
yeah.
born, like genetically, yeah, they're just sterile. It's kind of like a mule. Like when you breed a horse and a donkey is close enough together that they can have offspring, but the offspring is almost always sterile. And it's kind of like the same with us and the elongated skulls. Like we're closely related, but not close enough.
Oh yeah. Oh my goodness. Okay. Well, then we get into, you know, we've got these epidemics of all these missing children and these missing people, and you have some knowledge of when you were down there. You actually witnessed literal children in cages, humans in cages, and not only are people being tortured and being eaten on, right?
Yeah, I mean, I was told it came primarily from like the mines of the moon, because there was like a brothel there, and I guess if the kids' scores weren't high enough, their IQ scores, the higher IQ score you have, the more likely you are to have things like telepathy, be able to look down timelines. It's like you're more kind of interconnected with your spirit, with your soul, your consciousness when you have a higher IQ, and the more you're able to tap into like the abilities that you would normally only have like in the spirit realm, or the afterlife, or whatever you want to call it. But yeah, the kids in the underground cages, he told me that, well, when I was talking to Robert, the executive officer, before I was getting out of the Navy, and I was talking to him, for a good 2 hours probably. And I asked him like, what were the kids in the cages for? I kept on saying that, and he wouldn't respond. And then eventually he responded, and he said, "Have you ever seen the movie Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "You remember the adrenochrome scene?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Well, that's where they get it from." And he told me that, they were like in dog kennels stacked up, and they were very white, like pale. And I remember I was being drugged by a man and a woman, and like in the beginning, before I was actually tied up to a torture rack and everything. And this little girl, I think is what it was, slammed her hands on the cage, and her eyes were like black. They were so dilated, and her hair was matted. And I kept on saying, like, what were the kids for? And he told me, and he said that they're all stacked up, these cages, and they run a current through it, which renders them unconscious, and it causes the adrenaline to kick in. And then they strap them down to a table, and they go to the top vertebrae below the skull, and they give them kind of like a spinal tap. And that's where they get it from. And I asked how much, and he said, he said like 2 or 3 pints. And I said, some of those kids were like 3 or 4 that would kill them. And he said, it does. And then he said that they put them in something that looks like a wood chipper, and then they feed them to the other children. Like, and if they reach puberty, I guess they don't have as many stem cells, so they're not worth anything anymore. And then they slit their throats, and then they throw them in like a wood chipper, and do that.
Oh my
But he told me that song by Jack White and the White Stripes, Little Ghost, he was like the main distributor for the music industry at the time. And he said he was going to retire soon, and he did, like, from music, because he would make so much money off sales of this drug. And Little Ghost, the one I fear the most. He fears that people are going to find out what he's doing. Because of my condition, his condition is his body doesn't produce stem cell anymore. It's kind of like doing steroids, like your body stops producing testosterone. But with stem cells, it's like you die if you don't have any more stem cells left. So you have to keep it up. And he said, the part of the song, I thought I was holding a hand, but I was holding a glove. He said that because they're always in those cages their whole life, they're kind of like veal. And the sinuate doesn't connect properly to the muscle. So when you grab onto their hand, it feels like you can pull their skin off like a glove, because they never get exercise or anything. They live in these cages. And yeah, he was telling me, all about that. And he told me, like, well, I mean, Tom Cruise came to the base, this St. Maugen, and he was allowed in the underground base. And it's very,
What?
very,
Tom
yeah,
Cruise.
Tom
He's
Cruise.
he's like real big into Scientology stuff too, right? He's probably got a few clones, I would assume, and pretty deep in the programs, maybe.
I would guess, but
Yeah.
I remember the Satanist in the bar was saying, I got to see, we were watching, Mission Impossible.
Mm-hmm.
And, this was like in 2004 to 2006 around about. And he said I got to meet him. And he said he bought adrenochrome off of me. And I didn't know what the hell that was. Like, I really didn't know what they were talking about. And yeah, Robert later on told me that, he's like the main distributor for the Scientologist. And he was like an everyday user. And he told me those kind of, when he freaked out and he like pinned Oprah to the couch and said, I'm in love with Katie Holmes when he came on Oprah one time. He said he just got done doing it in the dressing room. He said that's how it affects you. It's like a speed.
He definitely looked a little out of his brain on that episode. He was jumping on the chair and stuff. I remember. Okay.
Yeah, he's pinning her down.
So he was all jacked up. That was not Mountain Dew. Okay, I know I like to quote Talladega Nights. He was not all jacked up on Mountain Dew. It was something else. Okay. Yeah. Golly, that's horrible. Okay, this is all just horrible, horrible stuff. But a lot of us are very familiar with what you're speaking of, but we just have not heard firsthand testimony about it. It's that thing that we all wonder about, but it's almost like it's too disturbing to even look into anymore. In my case, at least, it's so disturbing. Okay, but my big thing is, of course, on this channel is talking about the missing people out of our national parks and our clusters of missing people and where are all these people going, including children. And it seems as though a lot of them may be going to these underground bases. They are being drained of their blood. They are being disposed of. That was actually in the remote viewing data for these blind targets Barry gave me with the missing people. It lines right up with basically what you're talking about. Okay. Mm-hmm. And you had mentioned Aquino. Okay. Isn't that the head of like the Church of, I won't say the Church of Satan, but isn't he like was a top level, like top brass in the military or something? And he's like a Satanist.
He was he's a colonel. Okay. And he wasn't full bird, but with a lieutenant colonel. And he was, I mean, I watched the video and I don't know if they still have it on Rumble, but it wasn't like a video made for Rumble. It was something on primetime, like ABC or CBS. And it was like a year after the Presidio base was closed. And it's something called, there's an army base called the Presidio in San Francisco, California. And there were like the entire daycare center, like over 60 kids accused him of pedophilia. Oh, gosh. And they claimed that they were taken to the basement of the daycare center. They walked through a tunnel, climbed up another ladder into another basement. And they were in his house on base. Like they described what his wife looked like and all these different like throne chair that he had in his house. They described all these crazy things. And it was like over 60 kids. And anyways, like this forensic team, a civilian forensic team was called in because the parents, rightfully so, they complained because nothing happened to him. He wasn't even processed. He didn't even get a mugshot. He didn't get fingerprinted, like nothing. And Robert told me it was because like they were all Satanists, like they were all in on it. He said that the lawyer, both the lawyers, the judge, and the daycare workers were all Satanists. They were all like in this club. And that's why he got away with it scot-free. And anyways, this civilian, police, forensic team, they found, stucco on the basement wall, the daycare center, stucco in his basement wall. They did a compaction test on the earth and it was loose dirt. And they dug it all up and they found this tunnel and they found remains of a child. And there wasn't enough to be able to tell if it was male or female. The DNA technology wasn't as good back then. But yeah, they found like partial remains of like a child skeleton. And yeah, he just got away with it. And it was just like, how did this happen? And whenever you heard things like satanic panic, and you used to hear that all the time in the 80s, he invented that. He was a psychological operations officer. And he realized that, he knew that if you repeat something enough, people will just believe it. So that he just kind of like repeated satanic panic over and over again until people just fell for it, and they thought it was just like something that people made up because they played too much Dungeons and Dragons or something. You know what I mean? It was just,
That's where we all went wrong. That's where it all started going wrong, because everybody started turning their nose up to it. It's like, oh, it's just satanic panic. I mean, I just did a show recently on Labubu dolls. Okay. And those are like the latest craze of like little dolls, and they're saying they're based off of Pazuzu demon and all this kind of stuff. And people are like, oh, it's just satanic panic. I'm like, I don't know, maybe there's something to them. Okay, because there does seem to be a worldwide satanic agenda, no doubt. But that actually kind of falls under the umbrella, in my opinion, of like the worldwide reptilian takeover, right? I mean, to me, I think it kind of goes hand in hand when you're talking about Satanism, the cannibalism, and reptilians. But, you know, of course, I've had some pushback occasionally with people that are like, oh, not all reptilians are bad, you know, and that's why I brought Matthew on the show, because he wanted to come discuss that with us. We had a great discussion on it. But you know, I've covered reptilians, suspected reptilians, shapeshifters in our media. Okay, news broadcasters, movie, you know, actors and actresses and singers and people that are saying they've actually watched as normal humans, what they think are normal humans, have transformed into almost like holographic, you know, reptilians and stuff. I mean, it's becoming more common to hear about that, Daryl.
Yeah, and I mean, he did that, whatever, that, you know, what David Icke talks about, the reptilian shapeshifter trick in front of me. And that's all it really was a trick, because as like the goon said, you know, I could see between the echoes. That's how he put it. And it was almost like, and Max Spears talks about this too. They don't, or when he was alive, they don't change. You know, they don't morph. They don't change into a reptile, then change back into a human. It's almost like he took like two images and kind of blended them together. And one was a Kino and one was the reptile. And he was able to take like these two images and blend them together. And then I saw like the reptile kind of like in a shadow form. It looked like it kind of like shuffled backwards into the shadows into the back of this cave. And I looked over his shoulder, you know, which was a Kino, the meat puppet, whatever you want to call it. And I said, nice trick. I could still see the reptile. And he stepped out of the shadows and he said, well, it works on most. And that was one of the reasons why, yeah, he didn't like me being able to see his trick, because it's almost like something they do to your mind. It's not really something like, it's not like they morph or they change. It's almost something they just kind of do to your mind, because they show themselves to you. A lot of people can't see them, the reptiles, because they live in this like kind of lower fourth density, which is like astral plane, spirit world type of thing. And they only, you know, most people can only see them when they show themselves to you. And I remember Robert explained to me, he's like, but you could see him, like, and he didn't like that. And he also, I said, like, if lower fourth is a thing, you know, then what's, you know, upper fourth? What's higher fourth? And then he said, like, you know, elves, fairies, gnomes, and I said those things are real, and he goes, yeah. He's like, they
all
live
the
in
stuff
like,
that I go look for. Yeah. That's why I'm out there chasing around. And that's why, you know, and this is where we get into the conversation about like Bigfoots being interdimensional and dogmen being interdimensional and stuff. They're on a different frequency than we are. Okay. And sometimes they're down in the lower frequency. There's different types. Sometimes they're just out there looking for food and they're hungry. Sometimes, you know, they're like highly telepathic, you know, intelligent beings. I mean, there's a variety of them out there. And so it's similar to that.
I asked if they were evil, and he said we would see lower fourth as evil, but he said upper fourth was more like mischievous, like they just kind of like to mess around with your life. Yeah, like the elves.
I mean, I got some humans I know like that in my life. Okay, I'm just kidding. Marian, thank you for that super sticker so much. She says, Yahoo, Mountain Dew, hit that like button. Yes, I'm gonna come at you like a spider monkey. Okay, that's from Talladega Nights, y'all, in case you're wondering. Thank you, Marian. I appreciate you and Gus so much. Yeah, that's very interesting. You know, Barry Littleton's been on Barry comes on the show all the time, and we talked about this kind of stuff. And we talked about like the crystalline, I think it's called like crystalline, some kind of like holographic technology or something that can be used for reptilians who are presenting as human, I guess you could say, presenting as human. And we were kind of, you know, going through some like videos and stuff of them glitching out. Like I called it reptilian glitch outs is what I called it. So it's really just us. I mean, there is technology. I mean, with AI, my goodness. I mean, we were talking about earlier, you'd mentioned the gray that you met was some sort of cyborg AI, organic AI or something, and it just makes you wonder. I've started wondering, like, are some of the cryptids we're experiencing out there, are they like cyborgs? Could some of these dogmen even be some sort of like an organic part cyborg, you know, being? I don't know. I know it sounds kind of weird, but not really. And
Yeah, I mean, there is like an actual ET species, and it looks the males look pretty much the ones I saw in the program. They look like, is it a Nubis or something? They looked almost like a
yeah,
Doberman Pinscher. They looked kind of like they had like the pricked up small ears, the pointed up ears, but no brown. It was just solid black, just like the statues depict it and things like that. And yeah, and also, I mean, I was told, like, I saw I said this on your last show I was on. I saw like a half man, half spider kind of thing where it had like the torso of a man, but like
mhm.
the bottom half of a spider, but it had like the eyes, and it had eyes going up its head, and it just had like a tuft of hair on top. And I asked my XO, I said, what was that? Because there was a memory that came back to me. And I said, what the hell was that thing? And he said, reptiles do that. They manipulate our DNA and grays and elongated skulls. And he said it was like building ships in a bottle to them. It was just something they did out of boredom, and it was like a hobby that they took up because our DNA is so malleable. They can splice it with other species on Earth, and they kind of create these chimeras or whatever you want to call them.
I'll never forget when you told us that on the show. You said human DNA is so malleable. You can mix it with anything, and that started really, it really resonated with me because of all of the different reports that I've gotten, even of like human horse hybrids and things like that. People have come on my shows and talked about their personal encounters with things they found in the woods or their neighbors have encountered. And it's always the government. They call somebody to report it, and the military shows up, throws it on the back of a flatbed truck, and it's never seen again. And they're told not to ever discuss it again.
Yeah, I mean, it could be these things escaping. Yeah, I mean, because
Mhm.
as far as I know, the underground, the caverns underground, they do this for fun, like for a hobby, almost, these ETs.
Oh man, and that goes back to the Earth being a laboratory as well. That's something that Barry talks about. We're always saying the Earth is a laboratory. We're just a big old experiment in a petri dish here. And so I'm assuming that happens a lot at these deep underground military bases. Is that where is there a lot of ET activity down there in those bases alongside the humans?
Oh, of course. I mean, and like my XO told me that every underground base in the world belongs to them because it's the underground. So it's like it's where these caverns get closer to the surface of Earth. That's where they designate to build an underground base. That's where they know where to build it. Is because it's where he told me like the world is honeycombed. The Earth is honeycombed with
Hmm.
caverns, and the closer these caverns get to the surface, that's where they build these underground bases. And it's kind of like a way, it's like a bizarre contract, you know what I mean, that these reptiles have. And it's like they can't go above ground. They're not really supposed to go above ground anymore. So they use these underground bases as a means to kind of get back above ground. They build these, they have the military build these underground bases. And, the military worked with them initially, like the modern day military started working with them initially for ET tech. They would give them a certain amount of technology for, underground bases and, so many people that would volunteer for these programs. And I was told that the two primary reasons for all underground bases is the adrenochrome market and to get people into these space programs. That's like the two main reasons that the whole thing that this base was, the guys who worked in it thought it was for, tracking subs in the Arctic Circle, like, the Russians and the Chinese and the North Koreans and things like that. That's what they were doing. They were tracking subs, but that's just kind of like a front, is really all it was. Like the real reason for all these underground bases is to harvest this drug and, for get people in the space program. And this kind of goes into another, like, maybe branch that you're kind of, the cryptid is vampires. He told me the legend of the vampires comes from people that abuse adrenochrome. And then a lot of these photographs, that you see of people that look like Johnny Depp and things like that from like their old black and white photos. He says it's real. And he said technology, mass technology is much more advanced than you know of. And, makeup is a lot more advanced. And these people are hundreds of years old because they've been doing this adrenochrome for so long. And he said that they have to do it at least once a week. And by the second week, if say they've been doing it for 20 years, they'll age 40 years in about 2 weeks. They'll double in age, however long they've been doing it. And then and then he goes, they go from vampire to ghoul is how he put it.
Oh my gosh.
And then by the third week, 99 times out of 100, they die. They almost always die from the withdrawal of adrenochrome because the body can't survive without stem cells and your body no longer makes it anymore. And that's
my gosh.
Said that the legend of the vampire comes from. It's from adrenochrome users.
Oh my gosh. Maybe we should start rounding up some of these actors and draining them of their supply. So, and I think that might have happened briefly for all the world to see back when, about what was that, like 4 or 5 years ago, they were panicking, right? I remember that. And it's so cool that you're bringing this up right now because I have over and over again, I have done shows where I'm showing side-by-sides of actors today and then figures from prehistory, basically to the Renaissance era, to you name it, kings, queens, sergeants, presidents, all this stuff, military, world leaders. And these are our actors today. They're on a world stage. Okay. And it's like, well, how are they immortal? Are they just clones? Or are they vampires? Are they immortal? Or are we is this AI? Are we being lied to? Or is this just, what is going on? And so I think you just answered it right there. That was my suspicion. They're immortal.
They're very old. There's another one of, what's that guy from Raising Arizona? I forget his name. He's got like a Wild West photo, or it looks like 1800s. It looks like.
Oh, yeah. Nicolas Cage is a straight up vampire.
There's a picture of him. Yeah.
For entertainment purposes only, y'all. Okay, he's a straight up vampire. He even has a movie where he is a vampire. He plays a vampire.
I forgot about that. Yeah, Renfield.
Oh yeah. They put it in our faces. Okay.
They call that soft disclosure too. He told me. He said it's like a way of like putting it into the subconscious, and it's also like a way of keeping their karma clean. Because it's like they kind of have to tell you what they're doing to get away with it. Because there is kind of like a balance. There is like a karma. And it's a way to kind of like bypass that, through these different, they show you in movies and with the, the Georgia Guidestones they blew up and everything else we have to lower the population of the earth to 500 million so it's manageable. They're kind of letting you know what they want to do to you, but they're letting you know through The Simpsons and through movies and, things like that where people, and they call it soft disclosure.
Oh, I was at the Georgia Guidestones. It was like the month that they blew up. I was actually there. I got called out to a Bigfoot death, a Bigfoot related death at a state park out there. And I took 3 of my guys from one of my teams out there, and we stopped by the Georgia Guidestones. It was in Elberton, Georgia, and within about 3 weeks or so, they had been exploded. Okay, and so that was interesting. That was very interesting. It was almost like an Illuminati 10 Commandments. Is what it felt like.
In different languages, around the world,
Yeah, that was definitely an inside job there. I don't know. Everything is symbolic, though, right? So even them blowing up was symbolic. But I don't know. I suspect there's probably some kind of underground base there around Elberton too. I think the Cherokee call that the belly button of the earth. In that area, it's like supposed to be the center of the world, is what according to what I was told. I'm not sure the validity to all that, but that's what I was told. But wow, okay. And then vampires, man.
Yeah, the old newspaper clippings of I forget, it was in California when they were building the subway systems in California. There was like a straight up newspaper, and they said, they found these underground tunnels and lizard people and stuff like that. And it was just like an old newspaper from, I think, the early 20th century. But you could still find the clippings and things on the internet. And they found this extremely complex cave system as they were like digging, these underground. I don't know what they were digging, do this, but they found it, and it was in the paper. It was all over the paper. They found all these like caverns.
In Los Angeles. Okay,
Yeah.
Los Angeles. It was the secret lizard people city under Los Angeles.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's there. It's like there. It's like, but people just don't want to listen. Yeah,
it's 100% there. I have covered it on my channel several times. I think it was even a remote viewing target that I was given, and there were 100% reptilians. I mean, it was there's something about the energy of that place. And is that another thing about these deep underground military bases? I know they're basically doing blood rituals down there. Is what they're doing. Blood rituals, sacrifices, all that stuff. Very satanic agenda in our deep underground military bases. It's very connected to our military, which is wild to me. Super wild. But they put these deep underground military bases in particular points of like power, right? Like energetic power and all that kind of stuff, to make the rituals even stronger. And I don't know. Am I onto something?
I mean, yeah. I mean, because I told him, like, this base should be burned down, like, after he was telling me all this stuff. And he said, if you think this place is bad, you should see the catacombs of the Vatican. And he basically said that that's like cursed land. That, like, even if they did blow up the Vatican, or he said that they were going to eventually blow up the catacombs below it. And there's like catacombs from pre-Rome, like before Rome was around in that area. There's something about, the Vatican that's very important to them. And he said that the catacombs would be, blown up, and they go so deep that the church would just fall into the earth. And he said nothing would be built there, because he basically called it like cursed land. So, I mean, that's like a thing, like very negative energy doing very negative things for a very long time in a certain area. It kind of gives it like a spirit in itself. These things are real. And I mean, yeah, he told me archons were real, and I had to ask him what an archon was, and he said evil spirits, and he was telling me that it's a lot more spiritual than you think, like the UFO thing than people lead on. There's like a lot more of a spirit realm to it than people want to accept.
Big time, and that's in connection to all the cryptids. Everywhere where we're having most of the places where we have dogman sightings and Bigfoot sightings, these are cursed lands, either blessed or cursed. And there's a lot of, it's always around Indian burial mounds, cemeteries, places of power, especially like Native American lands and things like that. Places where there have been battles, war. Okay, I've gotten so tuned into this at this point. I am convinced that all of the wars, even the Civil War battles, they were fought on lands that were picked beforehand to have all that bloodshed, because the land requires blood. Okay. And I don't think anything is a coincidence. Things happen at places for a reason. And
did you hear about the family they were at Gettysburg and they saw a reenactment of Gettysburg, and they were watching it, but it was just like them. It was just like, a husband and wife and a few kids, and they were watching this reenactment, and they went back to like the park ranger area, and they said, like, we really enjoyed your reenactment. And the guy said, like, what are you talking about? Like, he had no idea. So he kind of, they saw, it was almost like this echo in time, like this time loop where there was like the Gettysburg battle was like, being fought again. And, they were pretty far away. They just thought it was reenactment soldiers. But yeah, the park ranger had no idea what they were talking about. And that's like a pretty popular story I saw on television before. Yeah.
Well, I had, so a guy named Eric came on my show. He's a Paranormal Highway. He came on. I don't think he has his channel anymore, but he and his brother went to a reenactment in, I don't know I think it was Gettysburg, actually. They went to a reenactment, and when they got there, they saw like a hospital, like a reenactment of like a field hospital. And people were like, really being brought in or being injured, and they had doctors, and they were like, oh, that's cool. Let's go get out and see this. And they got right in the middle of it. And they said they remembered a woman offered them beer. They were like, why would we want beer at a reenactment? This is weird. They said it was all way too real. Turns out they were there for like an hour or more, watching this real scene going down. They said it was way too real to be in reenactment, but they just went with it. They were like, okay. Found out there was no reenactment that day. There was just like what you said, but this was at like a field hospital, which is really interesting. And by the way, I did take my son to a haunted storytelling thing at the Pickett's Mill battlefield here in Georgia, where they had a huge Civil War battle. And as we were leaving, we heard the cannons firing in the field, and the cannons were not actually firing out there, but we could feel it in the ground and everything. It was wild. It was wild. So yeah, I do believe that they places of like battles and things like that, it's just all that energy. It opens a portal, Daryl. It's got to open a portal or something. One that was already there or one that they create.
I believe it. Yeah.
Yeah. And cryptids are utilizing those as well. 100%. Oh my gosh. This has been a fantastic show today, Daryl. Man.
Great.
Honestly, I'm hating that I'm doing these shorter shows because I got to go get my kid from school now, okay, during the day. But I know you will come back on one day, right? And like we can talk some more about this, okay? Do you have any final thoughts, or I mean, did we talk about all the new stuff today? Did we get it all out today?
Yeah, all the new stuff about why is a reptile, an Egyptian god doing in Cornwall? Like that was my major question for him when it didn't make any sense to me. But then he told me about the tin, and that their major export, that the ancient Egyptians got all their tin to mix with copper to create bronze, and they got it all from Cornwall, and that's still the #1 export from Cornwall to this day is tin mining.
Oh my gosh! Well, SeaBee has come up often recently, and there is a connection for sure to SeaBee and some of the reptilian goings on around here. And I am so glad that you joined us today, Daryl. I really am. And I think that this is more disclosure in this hour and 10 minutes that we've had today than you're going to get from any kind of government source or any kind of anywhere, mass media, public, anything like that. And so I applaud you, Daryl. Thank you so much for coming on and talking about it.
Thank you for having me.
Are you planning on writing a book? I know you've been in works, right?
Yeah, I'm probably around in the middle of it right now. Yes, I'm doing it. Yeah, 3 times a week, just about. Yeah, writing it. Yeah, so it's coming along pretty quick now. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I hope that you will get that thing done soon so I can read it. I know our audience would love to purchase your book and stuff. So please keep us posted on that. And I know you have a website. Is this a good way for people to get in touch with you? Or just to see your story? I know you've got some interviews on your website and stuff like that.
Yeah, like you can get in touch with me by email there, and I have most of my interviews are there. I'll put this one up when I get the chance, and it's Daryl, Daryl, D as in Delta, James.com. That's it right there.
Wonderful. Okay, wonderful. You guys go check out DarylDJames.com. And yes, and also you do a lot of conferences and stuff too. I mean, I occasionally run into you from time to time, face to face. Yeah, we always have fun, man. We always have a good time.
I'm going to the one in Orlando with James Rink, Super Soldier, in October. Are you going to be there?
Guess what? I'll be there too.
Awesome. Yeah.
Yes, I'll be back down there. The Super Soldier Activation Conference, I believe. He just put me on the lineup and announced that yesterday. I jumped in his chat and gave him a little shout out while he was giving me a shout out yesterday. So that'll be awesome. Yeah. So you guys please come down and see us. We're going to be it's October is it the 12th and 13th? I can't remember the date. I'm going to have to I'll get the information and get it out to everybody soon. I just got put on the roster this week. So we will see y'all down in Orlando. I'll see you down in Orlando, Daryl. That's going to be awesome. All right. Okay. Well, I hope everybody enjoyed the show today, and I hope everybody learned a little something. I know I always do. And I want to thank Brian Sang and Maureen both for the super stickers today. You guys are really awesome. And so, yes, thank you guys so much. Come back and see me tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Eastern. I will be here live and direct with a remote viewing show. And yeah, Daryl, keep your eyes on that 3-1 Atlas, okay, or 3-eye Atlas, okay. Let me know what you think. I'll hit you up sometime, and you can, if you get any more information on it, let me know. Okay.
All right. Thanks, Jessica.
Awesome. Okay. Well, Daryl, thank you so much for being here. Please come back and see me. Okay. And we'll plan on it. Okay, y'all. Everybody have a wonderful day, and I will see you guys back here on tomorrow. Okay, y'all. Please stay safe out there. Don't live in fear. Okay. I know Daryl and I talk about a lot of really just terrible stuff, honestly, when it comes down to the trafficking and things that are going on. Just be aware. Okay. Be aware of it, but don't live in fear. All right. I'm sending all my love and light to you guys today, and I'll see y'all back here tomorrow night. All right. Bye, Daryl. See y'all.
Bye, Jessica.